I'm on your side. I'm on your team. We want to get through this together. I'm not coming in as someone pulling the rug out from underneath you. We're going to get through this together. And I think that allows them to kind of relax a little bit, take that weight off the shoulders because I'm taking that burden.
Welcome to Better Together podcast, produced and directed by our Hospice of South Central Indiana, a not-for-profit organization dedicated to making every moment count. We share true stories about hospice, palliative, and personal care services that we provide in 22 counties all over the state of Indiana. I'm your host and president, Steph King. Well, welcome today. I have three of our fantastic social workers. Welcome, ladies.
Hello.
Hello. We are celebrating National Social Work Month. I have with me Jen Bittner, who covers our Columbus area, and Hannah Ballard, Greensburg, hello, and Olivia Clarkson in North Vernon. For our listeners, many people hear the word or the term social worker. They aren't exactly sure what that means when, you're under hospice care. And so would one of you describe what does a hospice social worker actually do day to day? Yeah, Hannah.
Yeah, that can kind of mean a wide range of things. So that's emotional support to the patients and families in nursing homes, in their own homes, working with the VA to help get caregivers in the home for our veterans, working with nursing homes to get placement for patients, and even here at our inpatient center, working with staff here to get our patients over for respite care as well.
What other thoughts, Olivia? Other thoughts?
She pretty much summed it up. I always tell our patients or families, because usually sometimes we're meeting them after the nurses, so we're kind of a second or third friendly face in the home. A lot of the times I always try to say, we do a little bit of everything, and if we don't know the answer, we're going to try to find it for you.
When you first meet a patient and their loved ones or their family members, their support, that's surrounding them, what are some of the things that you're paying attention to or some of the things you're listening for?
Some of the things that I listen for when I meet with families, what are their goals? What do they specifically want at this stage of their care? Many times they might come to us having gone through treatment, if it is for a cancer or something like that. And in which case, do they want to continue going to see a dentist while they're in our care? Like, how does that look? Do they want to have in-home caregivers? Again, trying to figure out who is their person in the home to best support them, and then how as we as social workers can meet that need of the individual in their home.
You're really living out the mission with the patient, and creating a plan, our mission to make every moment count for them. I'm hearing that. So it's exciting that you're looking at the patient and their family and asking, like, what matters most today? How can we make that happen?
Yeah, another thing whenever I first go into homes and meet our patients and our families is I'm here to support you however that looks. I'm here to just kind of be your guide. I'm not necessarily here to say what's right or wrong or what are your goals? What do you need? Another thing is I love to just sit and listen to their stories and their wisdom. And that just shows you so much about them and their journey to kind of help continue that on while they're still in our care.
So I'm going to, so you said the word stories, and that's how I remember things. And I think, for our listeners, it's so nice to hear a real, story. And we promise to bring that in our podcast. So can you share a story maybe of a recent patient or family and maybe what your experience was when you first walked in and, gathered information and you asked them what mattered most and what happened next?
One that comes to my mind right away is men specifically love talking about their wives.
Okay.
And so I love hearing, how did you meet? How long have you been together?
Okay.
And so what matters most, a lot of the answer is my wife, my family, my kids. One story specifically, a gentleman was sharing how he met his wife and she was already engaged when he had met her.
Okay.
And she was engaged to his best friend.
And she's in the room listening to
Yes, and she's laughing. She's crying from laughing so hard. He's telling the story, and he goes, I knew what I want, and I got it. He asked her on a date. She got engaged on a Friday, asked her on a date on Saturday, and she said yes. And so his buddy was like, well, we're getting married. And he was like, no, you're not. I'm taking her out on a date on Saturday.
No.
And so he was just so sweet talking about her and all of the characteristics that he loves about her and all of those things. So just being in that space and in that moment to just witness their love. It's just amazing.
It's so sweet. What else?
I was going to say, I've been hearing a lot of similar stories compared to Hannah, similarly like that this past couple weeks. So it must be a thing that we're hearing. For me, I know a lot of the times I'm also meeting with a lot of the children of our patients. So sometimes when it comes to, what are we going to talk about, because patient may want one thing, family may want another. So a lot of the times we do that education on patient autonomy. So when we're talking about stories, I have one in particular where there's a daughter involved taking care of her mother. And, she wants to see all of these things. She talks about all of the trips. And every once in a while, the mom, because she has Alzheimer's, does not always remember some of these conversations. But every once in a while, she hears some of the stories that the daughter is telling me. And then just the look on her face. And she goes, oh, and it's just one of those moments, because it even makes the daughter so excited because she goes, she remembers in that moment. And then sometimes there will be a couple comments where you just go, yep, this is a good memory for everyone involved.
There are different conversations we have. And so, hospice focuses on comfort and support. From your perspective, being a social worker, what does that look like to support someone, emotionally and practically? And what are some of the ways you do that?
A lot of the times we're focused on, these are all of the things that I'm worried about, I'm stressed about, I don't know what to do next. But a lot of the times too, it's encouraging those stories, encouraging, in this moment, we're more than just patient and caregiver, and kind of bringing back that human piece and that relationship that they have. I always talk about the hat analogy with so many of my families, just because, we always wear different hats of, in this moment, we're stuck in that role, we feel like, of caregiver. And I always say, you are a caregiver to them, but also remember, patient may sometimes want to have a conversation that's, outside of, I am just a patient in this moment. And it's bringing that human quality back to that relationship, and sometimes encouraging that is kind of where I start with.
It's really good that when you can bring that different role perspective, someone who's in the home being cared for by their adult child, for example, maybe that adult daughter or son would really like to just have that role of, I'm just here to be the child of you. And so then that's when we talk about, let's talk about respite at the inpatient facility, where we take over the care for the person. You can just show up and just be that family member and not have to worry about, did mom or dad get their meds? Did mom or dad need something bathing wise or personal care?
So, it's focusing, sometimes you're focusing on the patient, but sometimes you're focusing on their caregiver and their loved ones, right? That's the beautiful thing about hospice. We take care of the whole unit, the whole community around our patients. So navigating difficult conversations and decisions. Sometimes we get folks early on hospice. It might be taking someone's keys away. They were driving a couple of weeks ago.
I always come to those conversations talking about safety. I always say my most important role, what I care about the most, is your safety, talking about patient and family. So when it comes to having those conversations, I always come from, I'm on your side. I'm on your team. We want to get through this together. I'm not coming in as someone pulling the rug out from underneath you. We're going to get through this together. And I think that allows them to kind of relax a little bit, take that weight off the shoulders, because I'm taking that burden.
Sometimes we use the language bereavement risk, a risk of, deep grief, and we want to be ahead of that and supporting our family members as they sort of walk through those changes with their loved one. And what are some of the ways that you kind of assess that, and then you support folks through that?
Hospice at admission gives the packet, one of the booklets is When the Time Comes. And that kind of spells out to the loved one, to the caregiver, and to the patient as to what to expect. And then when it comes to having the difficult conversations and allowing that space of the emotional aspect, we can use our resources to guide families and patients. Another hard conversation that we have sometimes would be safety at home is not paramount. It is paramount right now. Our concern is like, let's get you to a facility, you know, but if that's not their goal, we have to navigate that very carefully.
Yeah, if the goal is to stay home, we want to make that happen if that's what matters most and help you be successful in your home and safe.
Yeah, so a lot of the times it comes back to, you know, who are our supports? That's usually one of the first questions I ask when I'm meeting families and their loved ones. I'm like, okay, who are your daily supports that are here? Who do you talk with? Because sometimes we have patients who want to stay at home. They may not have family. So it's, you know, neighborhood friends. It's what does family look like for you? Because to everyone it's different. It's not just kids in those situations.
Could be church members, could be people, you know, in their active community, like Millrace Center has an active community here in Columbus.
As patients transition, because we're talking about transitions, what may be working in one moment as a support may not be working as a patient needs more and more care. And those conversations can be really difficult.
I can speak of one story that I had where a gentleman who is a veteran is on services with us and living at home with his adult daughter. And she's still working full time and in fact starting a new job. So the pressure that she's getting on the external side of the family is very heavy. And then internally within the family unit itself, you know, caring for dad, making sure that her children have what they need. So navigating, you know, the VA resources and finding the areas that can be supportive. So what we did in that situation with that family was through the VA, we did an end-of-life contract, and he now lives at a facility that supports his need. The daughter is able to go visit. Her children are able to be in school and be successful, and the patient has excellent care from our nursing staff that goes in.
You know, and social workers often help in ways that people may not expect. What are some of the ways that you've been able to help that might surprise people?
One thing that I can think of, I know we talk about emotional support, but what does that look like? I've had that question a lot when I first meet patients and families because, you know, I have a spiel of this is who I am. I kind of introduce myself to the patients and families in the role. But then they're like, what is emotional support? What does that look like? What does that mean? And so I just go deeper into what that looks like. Well, I'm here to support you, take that burden off, like I was saying before. And then lots of times it takes a little bit of time for someone to warm up to you to have that emotional support. And so they don't truly recognize what that is. One thing in specific is talking about anticipatory grieving. That's one thing that I can help provide a little insight because they're like, I'm feeling all of these feelings. What do they mean and why? And I'm like, well, that's anticipatory grief. And they're like, oh, that makes so much sense. And then they're like, oh, this is what you were talking about with the emotional support. And so all of the stars kind of align in that kind of sense. And I also have an analogy that I always say when it comes to grief, and I view it as the ocean. The water's always going to be there. There's always going to be waves. Sometimes they're little, sometimes they're big, sometimes it's a tsunami. And that's kind of how grief is. Grief is always there. It's always going to be with us before and after. It just depends on the day and how that is, if you're having a big wave or a small wave. And so that's one thing that, yes, we do say emotional support, but what that looks like is different in their eyes than what you would really think.
You know, I was thinking about Make-A-Wish moments, and I had a request come across my desk from one of our team members who's not with us today, Chelsea, and she identified a Make-A-Wish moment from a patient. And I know you have those opportunities to listen in between the lines and see what you could make really special for folks.
Sometimes it's, excuse me, as a lot of our patients are now, you know, we're in spring and graduation is coming up. And so a lot of our patients, they say, I want to see my granddaughter, my grandson graduate high school. I want to be there. Get me a walker. Where can I get a motorized scooter thing? You know, and then we work with the patient to say what's logistically possible. You know, if it's a matter of the patient is on oxygen, like let's collaborate with the nurse to make sure that they have the ability to have the oxygen. If it's a safety risk of, you know, hey, you're a little unsteady right now, you have a walker, let's make sure that we collaborate with the nurse to get a rollator, to order that durable medical equipment to allow you to do those things.
You know, for somebody that's listening that might be walking this journey with a loved one, what's one piece of advice that you want to leave with them today?
Every emotion that loved one, the caregiver is having, is valid. And that can swing from sadness to joy to anger. There is a wide variety of what they'll experience, like the analogy of the ocean. And we are here to validate them and to support.
There's a badge rule that I have, and it's got Winnie the Pooh, and it says, sometimes the smallest things take up the most room in our hearts. With our families, I say it's the small moments and it's the big victories sometimes. And I said, even in just those quiet moments, especially if we're getting closer to a patient who's actively passing with loved ones in the room, we're always talking about provide the comforting touch, provide the comforting talk, tell the stories.
This is Better Together, a podcast dedicated to making every moment count. Thank you for listening. Please like us and share on your social media channels. If you have a question, you'd like to learn more about a specific topic, you can find us at ourhospice.org. That's OUR hospice.org, or call 812-314-8083. Until next time, remember, life is short. We are better together, making every single moment count.